He is standing under lights so bright he can barely see the crowd in front of him, but he can hear them. Thousands of voices, screaming his name. This is the man who broke sales records that stood for decades. The best-selling solo artist in American history, and then, without warning, he walks away. No farewell tour. No press conference that explained it all. Just silence. Because the truth is, Garth Brooks didn't disappear when the music stopped selling. He didn't disappear because the fans stopped coming. He walked away for a reason far more personal, and almost nobody saw it coming. But that wasn't even the strangest turn in his story. Before he vanished, this cowboy hat-wearing, Heartland-singing icon did something that stunned everyone who thought they knew him. He became someone else entirely. New name. New sound. New face. And fans were left asking, who is this, and what happened to Garth Brooks? So what really pushed him to that point? What was he running from, and what finally brought him back? Stay with this one, because the real story is far more human than the headlines ever let on. Long before the sold-out stadiums, he was just a kid from Yukon, Oklahoma, growing up in a house filled with music. His mother had once chased the same dream herself, and young Garth watched, absorbed, and started believing maybe, just maybe, he could chase it too. But dreams don't hand themselves over easily. In 1985, he packed everything he owned and drove straight to Nashville. He lasted less than a day before turning around and driving home. Rejected. Deflated. For most people, that would have been the end of it. It wasn't the end for him. He went back, sharpened his sound, studied what actually moved an audience, and 2 years later, he tried again. This time, he stayed. In 1989, his debut album hit, and it hit differently. He wasn't just singing. He was throwing himself across the stage, climbing rigging, breaking guitars, something country music had never really seen before. Then came the songs that didn't just play on the radio, they became part of people's lives. Weddings. Funerals. First dances. Broken hearts. By the early 90s, Garth Brooks wasn't just a star. He was a phenomenon. He outsold rock legends. He outsold pop icons. He would eventually be certified the best-selling solo artist in United States history, ahead of Elvis. Ahead of almost everyone who ever picked up a microphone. From the outside, it looked untouchable. A small-town kid turned king of country music, wealthy beyond imagination, loved by millions. But underneath all of it, something was quietly cracking. He had married his college sweetheart, Sandy Mal, back in 1986, before any of this fame existed. They had 3 daughters together. And as his career exploded into something almost impossible to control, the pressure on that marriage, and on him, was building in a way the public wouldn't understand for years. He was living 2 lives at once. The larger-than-life entertainer the world adored on stage, and a husband and father, quietly trying to hold everything together behind closed doors. Something had to give. And what happened next stunned absolutely everyone. By the late 90s, Garth had reached the kind of success most artists only dream about. Sold-out stadiums. Record-shattering albums. A legacy that already felt permanent. But that kind of success comes with a price nobody claps for. He was exhausted. Not the tired that sleep fixes, the tired that comes from years of never really being home. His daughters were growing up while he was living out of a tour bus. And quietly, painfully, his marriage was buckling under weight it was never built to carry. Then, in 1999, he did something nobody saw coming. He didn't release another country album. He became someone else. His name was Chris Gaines. Dark hair. A moody, fictional backstory. A sound that had nothing to do with cowboy boots or small-town anthems. Garth appeared on national television as this character, speaking about Chris Gaines as if he were a completely different person. Fans were confused. Critics were brutal. The album fell flat next to everything Garth had built before it. But here's what almost nobody understood in that moment. This wasn't just a strange experiment for ticket sales. It was, in his own words later on, an attempt to become someone else, anyone else, at a time when simply being Garth Brooks had started to feel suffocating. Behind that wig, behind that fictional biography, was a very real man quietly falling apart under the weight of his own fame. And while the world argued about Chris Gaines, the truth at home was far more serious than any headline let on. In 2000, Garth and Sandy divorced, after 14 years of marriage. For a man whose entire public image had been built on family, on small-town values, on being the devoted husband everyone believed in, this wasn't just a headline. It was a very public unraveling of the life he had spent years protecting from the spotlight. He didn't hide from it. He didn't pretend it wasn't happening. Instead, he did something that shocked the entire industry. He walked away. Not a break. Not a slowdown. A full stop. And the reason floored everyone who heard it. He wanted to raise his 3 daughters himself. No tour managers. No stadium contracts pulling him away. At the exact moment when labels were begging him to keep going, when promoters were offering him more money than most artists ever see in a lifetime. Garth Brooks chose fatherhood over fame. For years, he kept that promise. He turned down tour after tour. He stayed close to home in Oklahoma. He showed up to school events instead of sold-out arenas, living a life that looked nothing like the superstar the world remembered. But quietly, behind that ordinary life, something else was beginning to take shape. An old friendship, one that had been there for years, was slowly turning into something nobody expected. Her name was Trisha Yearwood. A country star in her own right, with a voice that carried its own devoted following. She and Garth had known each other for over a decade, performing together, touring together, long before either of them imagined anything more. But as his marriage to Sandy was ending, something between them started to shift. Friendship became something deeper. And by the early 2000s, they were undeniably together. In December 2005, they married quietly, at his ranch in Oklahoma, away from cameras, away from noise. For fans who had watched his divorce play out so publicly, this felt like something real. Not a scandal. A second chance. But the biggest surprise wasn't the marriage itself. It was what came after. Everyone assumed his touring days were over for good. Executives had quietly written him off as a stadium act of the past. Then, in 2009, he stepped back onto a stage in Las Vegas. Just him and a guitar. No pyrotechnics. No spectacle. Just a man reconnecting with music on his own terms. And then, in 2014, once his daughters were grown, he announced something almost nobody believed would ever happen again. A full world tour. Tickets vanished within minutes. City after city sold out instantly. Longtime fans and a brand new generation packed arenas all over again, and it became one of the highest-grossing tours in music history. The man who had walked away at the very peak of his career had just proven something extraordinary. His connection with people had never actually faded. It had simply been waiting. But this comeback wasn't just about ticket sales, or record numbers. It revealed who Garth Brooks really was, underneath every headline that ever chased him. He had walked away from music when most artists would have clung to the momentum forever. He'd risked everything on Chris Gaines, an attempt to become someone else that didn't go the way he hoped. He'd endured a divorce that played out in front of the entire country, the kind of pain most people are allowed to process quietly. And through every single moment of it, the choice that defined him wasn't a chart record or a sales milestone. It was choosing to be present, for the people who needed him most. When he finally returned to the stage, older, steadier, clearly more at peace, audiences felt something different in him. This wasn't a man desperate to reclaim relevance. This was someone who had lived through real loss, real pressure, real reinvention, and was finally standing in front of them as exactly who he was. His marriage to Trisha, now spanning nearly 2 decades, is often described by those close to them as one of the most genuine, grounded partnerships in the entire industry, 2 people who understand exactly what the other has sacrificed, because they've lived it themselves. He kept releasing music. He kept selling out arenas. And along the way, he collected honors that reflected a career few artists will ever come close to matching. But if you ask the people who actually know him, it was never really about the records. It was about a man who had every reason to let fame swallow him whole, and chose his family instead. There is still one more piece of this story though, the part that shows exactly where he stands today. At 64, Garth Brooks is still one of the most successful recording artists alive. He still performs. He still records. And he is still married to Trisha Yearwood, a relationship many fans consider the true happy ending to everything he went through. His daughters, now grown, have spoken about what his choice to step back meant to them. What once looked like career suicide turned out to be the decision he's proudest of, above every award, every record, every sold-out night. From a rejected kid outside Nashville, to the best-selling solo artist America has ever seen, to a father who gave it all up, to a man who found his way back, on his own terms. Garth Brooks' story was never really about fame at all. It was about what a person chooses to protect, when fame threatens to take everything else. So here's the question, was walking away at the height of his career the bravest thing Garth Brooks ever did, or the biggest risk he ever took? Tell us what you think in the comments below, and if this story pulled you in, subscribe, because there's another one waiting next week.